Shadows where the truth hides deep. Echoes of the lost and the secrets they keep. Cold cases burn in the back of your mind. We dig through the dark, one clue at a time. This ain't fiction, this is blood, this is truth. 12-gauge investigative, justice uncaged. We ask the questions they're too scared to say, shining a light where the guilty pray from killers.
This is 12-gauge investigative. Let's jump in.
We're built for the case. Just getting started. Justice is just getting started. 12-gauge investigative. We don't miss.
All right. How's everybody doing on this Sunday evening? Hope you are doing okay. My name is 12-gauge. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, I hope that you find what it is that you're looking for, something that helps you to keep coming back and to keep searching for the truth amidst all the chaos, amidst all the misinformation, amidst all the characterizations of people that do not want justice to be served in many of these cases. We're going to wait a little bit, let people have some time to come on in here. Like I said, my name is 12-gauge and welcome. You're more than welcome to come in here. But on your way in, be sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit it on the way out. And if you're not a subscriber, make sure that possibly you can subscribe. Tonight, we're going to talk about Jesus, I've been doing that all afternoon. Been calling him Al Bundy. I don't know why. But we're going to talk about Ted Bundy. And one of the reasons that I want to talk about Ted Bundy is because of the Dateline episode that was talking about the correlation between Ted Bundy and the internet searches that Mr. Brian Koberger was making and how he was viewing one of the videos of Mr. Maines, Detective Maines, I think his name is. I didn't want to play that video because I don't know how he is about people playing his stuff. But I had done a Bundy video of my own, so I hope it suffices just the same. I did have an individual that was there on panel with me, so hopefully you will enjoy it just the same. If not, I'll play just a little bit of that video, and hopefully Mr. Maines won't bother him so much. This is under fair use. And let me say hello to some of you in the chat. Ronnie Potter, my faithful mod. Sirius Black, thank you for being here. Jeremiah, good to see you after a while of not seeing you. Kathy Rutledge, thank you so much. You must enjoy the channel to keep coming back. I'm glad to see you. So here we go with the video.
There.
Right.
Yeah.
How about the chat? Y'all got any more comments? I mean, y'all been pretty knowledgeable on this neck case. And the reason there's the end to ask questions or give your comments on that case. I'm pretty sure everybody is pretty knowledgeable on this neck case. And the reason that I want to present this neck case is it has a lot of similarities to the Idaho 4 case. And I even wrote down some notes earlier that will kind of shock you. Um, but I'm going to go over some pictures that I found. And this first one is one of the abduction sites where he abducted a female off the beach. And he told her that he needed help with his sailboat. And there's two of them actually, not at the same time. I think it's like 4 hours apart. But he abducted them, killed them, and somebody, I guess, in that friend group was vigilant vigilant enough to take a photo of him and his Volkswagen bug. Isn't that interesting? And I wanted to tell you guys in the chat, if y'all have any questions at any time, please put the star in front of your question and I will try to answer it as quickly and as efficiently as I possibly can. Because I like chat interaction and I enjoy your questions and your comments. So if you have any kind of questions, any kind of comments about what's being said or presented, please do so and interact with us because that's what I'm here for. I'm here for you. I thought it was interesting that somebody was knowledgeable enough to take a picture of Ted Bundy, even if it's from the back. And as you can see right here on the right hand corner, they got a piece of his Volkswagen Beetle. So somebody was aware enough on this beach to get a picture of him. If you don't know the story about Ted Bundy, some of his attribute that he used to use was a sling, or he even had a fake cast that he would have individuals help him either look for a dog. In this photo, he was on this beach and he had approached two females, and he said that he was trying to um, launch his sailboat and that he needed a little help. Um, okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I can. The only reason I didn't make this bigger is because the bigger I make it, the smaller it makes the background. Is that better? Is that a little better for you? Is that better for you guys? So, Mickey, thank you for being here. You know, as far as this photo, this photo was just very interesting to me that they were able to capture this. So let's continue on. Isn't that crazy? Even back in the 70s, somebody had the mindset to say, I'm going to take a picture of this. Exactly, Leon. Okay, so I'm going to show these pictures, and if you have any feedback or any information about it, be sure to chime in there. There's the inside of
Yeah.
the Volkswagen.
Now, an interesting
And
fact about the Volkswagen, real quick,
go ahead.
is that at one of the colleges, I can't remember one of the universities that he.
Yes, Jeremiah, I've thought about doing that. I just haven't had a lot of time lately, so I will eventually do that. Thank you for asking. Great question. He says, have you thought about creating or starting a list of these similarities? What I hope to do tonight is verbally state them for you guys. Um, when I saw this picture of his Volkswagen Beetle, as you can see on the right hand side, the seat has been pushed back. And this was used when he would abduct somebody, he would either handcuff them or put them down where they couldn't be seen as he was driving off with them. So as you can see, the seats back then were not very big. So he had pushed his seat way back and he was able to um, have kind of like a a little compartment there where he could place whoever he abducted. And in this case, it was one of the females at the beach. Um, I don't believe that Brian had the capability to abduct anybody, but it still baffles me a little bit that that night, if Maddie was indeed the target, let me ask you guys a question, okay? If Maddie was indeed the target, would he potentially be going up in there to abduct her and take her away and was interrupted by his plan by everything else that went down? I've always thought that. Always thought that. Yeah, there's not much room in a Volkswagen. You're right about that. Not much room at all. And I think a lot of the women that he abducted were a smaller stature.
Wanted to go to, but wasn't there very long. When he met one of the another student, he kind of liked, kind of mimicked everything that this student did. And one of the things is that that student drove a Volkswagen like that, and he went and he got a Volkswagen
Oh,
almost
wow.
identical to that one, and they actually did a review, and that's kind of how I know that little nugget about the Volkswagen.
Right. And I also heard today, I was watching a documentary on it. See where the spring is right here? This seat was removable. And that's one of the reasons that he picked this vehicle is because he could abduct his prey, I guess, so to speak, and just throw him right there. And there you go.
I mean, because you think about it, do you really believe that he came into that home to do what he did? Maddie was a small statured female. He could have abducted her, taken her out, drove to wherever, and done whatever he wanted to do with her, and nobody would have been the wiser. But, like you said, Jeremiah, that actually could have been his plan. Maybe that set him off. And that's what caused them to give Kaylee the worst injuries because he was angry at that fact.
Go about your business. So I thought that was quite interesting
Hmm.
as well. Um,
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
we
another
got,
thing that
go ahead.
Oh, no, no. It's just another thing, as you show us another photo, I'm just gonna just kind of talk about, it was just very kind of intriguing to me whenever I was refamiliarizing myself with the Ted Bundy story, was the difference between how he would describe his childhood versus like when Sandy Holt, who was actually a childhood friend, would describe it, and how they are opposites, the descriptions of his childhood. So that was very interesting.
Hey, Walt,
Wasn't Ted Bundy adopted or it was biological?
No, yeah, so that's very interesting point that you bring up. So at the age of 14, when he was in in one of the prisons, the psychologist noted one of the big events that happened to him was at the age of 14, he found his birth certificate. And so in the father box, it said unknown. So let's think back then, right? If a woman, if became, or a girl became pregnant, she would be sent away to a home for unwedded mothers, because
Yes.
back then it was kind of like, it was looked down upon, if you were pregnant without being married. And so when his mother returned back, her father, so it would be grandfather to Ted, was asking, well, where is the boy? Because she told him she gave
Hmm.
birth to the boy, and she had actually left him behind and wasn't going. Her intentions were not to keep him. Her intentions were to have him adopt out, and he refused that, and he said, go back and get him. So she
thank you, Walt. You too. You know, it's an interesting factor. And at this point, I hadn't done a lot of research on Ted Bundy, but as she gets along down the line, and I am going to show a little bit of Detective Maine's video. That way we can kind of see that. So it might be a little long of a live tonight. So I hope that you are buckled in because there's going to be a lot of information and then we'll dissect it later on. So, as she was saying, Ted Bundy was born out of wedlock, so to speak. His mother went away to have him and then came back without Ted. So, where did Ted go? Where did Ted Bundy go at that point?
She went back, and so she got him. So back in the day, it was like that illegitimate child, you know.
Okay.
So you're
Very
right about
good.
that.
Very good. Right here on the screen, I'm showing you a bite mark on his last victim. He got frustrated and bit her on the breast. And back then, it was unheard of to do bite mark analysis to catch an individual. And what they did is they got a warrant because they pulled him over for driving a stolen vehicle. And they pulled him over. And at this point, they noticed his smile. And it said that his teeth were crooked. He had some chips in his teeth. So it made a very interesting bite mark area.
Hey, Lean, thank you for coming and joining us. I've been looking forward to seeing you in the chat. Thank you for being here. That is an interesting mark that was caught on a breast of a victim. And as you can see, that is definitely a mark. And they did an analysis on his teeth, and they were able to see the similarities in the bite mark.
So they did a cast of his bite. And when they did the overlay on this bite mark, that's what got him. So this was the trace DNA, so to speak.
Hey, Nina.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with that, that happened in Florida whenever
Yes.
yeah. And he had already, escaped. It was like 46 days he was on the run. And I think that Florida, that the Florida sheriff from, I can't remember the name of the little city, he was like, he was going to try anything. And I think that was the first time that they'd even were just trying anything to ensure to keep him behind bars.
Yes. Yes,
46
exactly.
days on a run.
I want to watch the video. That's not the one. Hold on a second. I have a video that just shows the crime scenes of Mr. Bundy's.
It's interesting that Ted Bundy had so many different victims in so many different states. He was in the Pacific Northwest, traveled down to Florida area, and he was also in the Colorado area.
Okay, here we go. This is taken by an individual on a page called Infamous Crime Location. So I'm giving them a shout out on the video. And those of you that were in the live last night, you heard Daniel talking about how the area.
Okay, we have a question for the chat. If anyone know how old he was during this time. So if you know how old he was during this time when he was on the run for 46 days, be sure to help Rondi out and let her know.
Would be foggy. Paula talked about it. Overcast, all this, that, and the other. So this individual is going to take it through Washington and part of Oregon, but he's going to talk about the killings in that area of the country. And then I'm going to talk about some more things. So let's try to pay attention on what he says and base it on the knowledge that you have. Okay. Well, here we go.
Harmon. Today's episode is all about Mr. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, of course, was one of the United States' most prolific serial killers. So today's episode, we're filming all the murder and abduction locations of Ted Bundy in and around Seattle. Ted Bundy killed people in numerous states, including Washington State, like we're doing now, Florida, Oregon, Colorado, and Utah. So he obviously got around and went to many different states during his abductions and killings.
Wow, I wasn't aware that Utah was one of them. Did y'all know that Utah was one of those states?
But of course, today's episode is going to feature his abductions and murders he committed just in and around Seattle. So I hope you guys enjoy. Stick around, and let's get into it.
So on January 31st, 1974, 21-year-old Linda Healy was attacked and murdered in the home behind me. Linda was Ted's first murder victim that we're aware of. Now, a couple of weeks prior to that, 11 blocks away, there was a young woman who was attacked, but she survived that encounter. Unfortunately, a couple of weeks later, Linda was sleeping in this home in the basement. That unfortunate evening, she lived in a home with 4 other women. One of the creepy details from the story was that the previous evening...
Okay, there's a similarity. She lived in a home with 4 other women. And she was attacked in the basement area, but we didn't have an attack in the basement. That would have been Bethany's room. So there's one.
One of her roommates warned her that she had seen a shadow outside of the window that previous night. So it leads us to believe that Ted had been targeting this home for some time. He had his eye on these women or this house. He must have felt like there was a way to get in. Maybe he could breach the security, if you will, a window or a door. He got in, he killed Linda in the home. Bloodstains and evidence of that murder was found in the house. Another detail of the story was that Linda's family, her mom and her dad, as well as her ex-boyfriend, were all planning to converge and have dinner with Linda the following day. And Linda was on her way. She actually had gone to Safeway to gather groceries and supplies to cook dinner for her parents and her ex-boyfriend that next day. Unfortunately, that night or that previous morning, she was killed in her home here. This is the...
You are right. I mean, it's like they do their surveillance, they do their reconnaissance. They're really in depth to the home that they're choosing. As we learn, targeted means that there's something about that house that makes it a viable option to either get in, get out. There's visibility issues. There's not a lot of people that are around. You can get in, get out, do what you do without being discovered. And that's what we've learned as far as targeted. So the 1122 house was just like that. It was very easy to get in, get out, a lot of tree lines, visibility options, and so forth.
Place where it really all began.
So Linda Healy, along with her 4 roommates, lived at 5517 Northeast 12th Street. Again, it's not that very far away from the UW campus. I don't know if all her roommates attended the campus or not, but she definitely did. But Linda actually worked at a radio.
Okay, so what do we know about 1122 King Road? I know you are pretty knowledgeable on this. There was a house full of women, right? Same thing. There was a female that was killed in this one. And there's going to be some more similarities, but I just wanted to throw those 2 out there. Okay, you want to say anything on this?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
not really. I mean, the only other thing that I would say is, this house was nearby yet another university.
Yes. Very good.
the station. And
I
the
agree.
next morning, she was
High
supposed
five,
to be
Paul.
going to her work there at the radio station. And of course, she never made it. Her and a bunch of her roommates went to a friend's house, and they got back here at about 10 p.m. or so. And Linda went upstairs and kind of was talking to one of her roommates named Carolyn, kind of before they were going to bed. And she was talking to Carolyn about her ex-boyfriend coming, like the next day, and kind of like how she felt about that. And Linda was saying, like, I feel okay about it. I feel like it's over. And Carolyn was kind of one of the last people that Linda spoke to. My guess is he must have seen.
Talking to her roommate about her ex-boyfriend, who also had an ex-boyfriend.
All the girls coming in and out of the house, and decided and chose that house after that. I guess he could have chose it out of complete randomness, but I think he must have probably saw them coming out of the house or something like that beforehand.
If this is not a sign that we're in Bundy country, I don't know what is. Here's an orange Volkswagen Beetle right behind me. This is very akin to what Ted Bundy was driving around the Seattle area and the University of Washington campus back in 1974 when these abductions began.
So the location I'm at right now used to be called the Flame Tavern. Now it's called Fiesta del Mar. At this location is where Ted Bundy abducted 22-year-old Brenda Carol Ball. The date was May 31st, 1974. And on this day, Brenda went out to what used to be called the Flame Tavern here and hung out and had some drinks. And this tavern
AKA Corner
was kind of one of her
Club.
normal hangouts. She would come here quite often. It says that Brenda attended Highline Community College up until 2 weeks before she was abducted here. She stayed at the tavern up until about 2 in the morning, which would have been June 1st, 1974. One of her friends was a musician, and she was trying to ask him for a ride back home. But unfortunately, he was going the opposite direction and said, hey, I can't take you because I'm going the other direction. And so Brenda ended up kind of asking around and was just hoping to maybe hitchhike home. And that,
Man, of all the luck to be asking around for a ride home, and who do you ask? Ted Bundy. He supposedly hung out at this spot. And what I think is interesting is we don't know if Brian hung out in Moscow at all. It's never been released. Yeah, he did attend the University of Utah. We don't know if he hung around any bars in Moscow, if he hung around any bars in the WSU area. If y'all have any knowledge of that, please type that in the chat. I'd like to know, because like I said, this is interactive tonight, and I'd like to know what y'all know about this case because I know very minimal. Even that night that I was doing it with Kay, she was educating me, so if y'all know any factual event that he was hanging out, Koberger, excuse me, Koberger was hanging out any bars or any kind of places in WSU area or even in Moscow that's been proven, please type that in the chat. This place is called, I can't even read that.
that, of course, is when she bumped into Ted Bundy. So witnesses at the tavern stated that they saw Brenda talking to a brown-haired man who was wearing a sling, an arm sling. Friends of hers described her as very free-spirited, meaning that she would go.
Yes, that was one of his MOs, is he would wear that arm sling. So think about that a little bit. If you see somebody with an arm sling or even with a fake cast on, your intuition is going to go down. Everything's going to kind of go a little down because you think, well, this individual's hurt. There's no way that he could harm me. He has an arm sling, so he's basically one arm. I'll talk to him, whatever. But we don't know if Brian had any kind of edited things like that. We've never been, keen keen to that type of information if there is any.
You know, days or even weeks without seeing anyone. She would just go out.
Look at that in the background of that restaurant. Isn't that ironic? Jack in the Box. Also, pay attention to the arm sling. That has some significance later on in the story. So just wanted to point that out to you guys.
And do her own thing, travel around. And so, of course, many people didn't know she actually disappeared. For about 2 weeks or so, someone finally put out a missing persons report with the police on June 17th, so about 16 days after she was abducted, when Ted Bundy was talking to the journalist in prison. And the reason why Ted Bundy decided to abduct her from a tavern parking lot was mainly to throw off police, because some of his previous abductions had been at some of the college campuses, including the University of Washington. And so in order to throw off police, he kind of decided to abduct someone not from a college campus this time, but from a tavern parking lot or bar parking lot. And so that's kind of why he chose to go seek out someone from a bar. Ted Bundy was also saying that he ended up abducting Brenda from the parking lot and taking her back to the Rogers rooming house and raped her and then murdered her and dumped.
Isn't that interesting how their MO just escalates? Like maybe 1 week they're going to abduct somebody from a random place, a beach area. The next week they're going to break into a sorority house or an off-campus house. This time he just at a bar and says, hey, I'm going to abduct this woman who needs a ride. Takes her back to the boarding house, rapes her, and kills her. I mean, it's like these people that were victims were just living their lives. They weren't really doing anything that would have caused them to be a victim, if you understand what I'm saying.
Dumped her body up on a mountain called Taylor Mountain. Now, what makes this abduction and murder more crazy than some of the other ones he committed here in Washington was the fact that on the afternoon and evening of May 31st, 1974, only like 4 or 5 hours before he abducted and killed Brenda, he actually was spending time with his fiancée, Elizabeth Kopfer, and Elizabeth's daughter, and Elizabeth's parents. They went out to have pizza at a pizza place, and they ended up.
Do you ever wonder if Brian was hanging out with the Asian girl before he went to murder? I mean, because they were friends, right? They weren't lovers, nothing like that, but they were friends. So could he have hung out with her before he went and committed the crimes, if that's what he did? You tell me.
Getting back to, I believe, Elizabeth's place at about 10 p.m. At that point, Elizabeth, she wrote a book after all this happened, and she stated in the book that after they got back from eating pizza, Ted was kind of acting a little strange. He was kind of pacing around and kind of acting a little weird, and he kind of made up.
Hey, I'm gonna ask y'all, does he have the Brian Koberger eyebrows and eyeballs kind of bulging out? 1 for yes, 2 for no.
An excuse that he had to go and that he had to leave.
Doesn't she look a lot younger than him? I mean, he looks older in that picture. Like, she looks a lot younger than him. I don't know how old he was in this picture, but he had the curly hair going on too, and the bushy eyebrows and the eyes. I mean, there was some similarity there, in my opinion, but I just picked out that she looked really young.
And so, again, after that, he left, and around midnight is when he showed up at the tavern here, and that's when he abducted Brenda and killed her.
I hear you, Leslie. That's terrible.
All right, guys. So it looks like the tavern, again, like I said, was called Fiesta Del Mar, but it looks like they changed the name again to El Baron Rojo. But even that I think has finally gone under. This place looks like it's been abandoned.
Is it morbid to want to go there and eat just to be in the place where a serial killer once was? Would y'all go to that place just to eat, even if the food sucked? Just to be in there to say, hey, I was in there the same place Ted Bundy was in the 70s. I'm thinking I would go if I was close enough, you know?
All right, guys, I'm at Roger's rooming house, and this is the house where Ted Bundy lived from about 1968 to 1974. He lived here for almost 6 years. So I'm going to go show you where he lived. At the time that Ted Bundy was living here at Roger's rooming house, he was engaged to Elizabeth Kopfer, and he dated Elizabeth up until he was arrested and his incarceration in Florida. So while he was living here, he was engaged to Elizabeth Kopfer. And it gets even deeper than that, but I'm going to give you guys more details once we get closer to the house. It's about a block away. All right, so next to me is Roger's rooming house, or what used to be known as Roger's rooming house. And again, this is where Ted Bundy lived almost 6 years.
Thank you for that, Mickey. I didn't know he was born in 46, but that's interesting right there. That's interesting to know. This right here used to be the boarding house, so he's in the alley, and he's kind of looking at the surveillance of the video he's filming. So he's behind the old boarding house.
Another one of Ted Bundy's victims was 18-year-old George Ann Hawkins. Now, George Ann was going to the UW campus, and she was trying to become a TV news anchor or a broadcast journalist. George Ann lived at the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority house, which is right behind us. She lived right here in the sorority house, and her boyfriend lived about 4 or 5 houses up, and he lived in, of course, the fraternity house.
But thank you for being here, Christine. I've never seen you here before, but thank you for being here and commenting.
Right up the road. So kind of keep in mind, guys, that she lived only 4 or 5 houses down from her boyfriend. That'll be pertinent to the case. So kind of keep that in check. But anyway, so the evening of June 10th, 1974, George Ann Hawkins left her sorority house here and headed towards the actual campus to go with some of.
It's interesting that you added the clown mask. I mean, I don't know if you're wearing those or that's how you came in incognito. We've never seen you before. So with those clown masks, you still look like that. So thank you for your comment.
Of her sorority sisters to go for some drinks. She ended up hanging out down at the campus up until about 11:30 p.m., close to midnight. She came back and told her sorority sisters that went with her, and she told them that she was going to head up to her boyfriend's fraternity house and hang out with him for a few hours and then head back to her sorority house. So as soon as George Ann left the fraternity house of her boyfriend, she walked down the alleyway behind the houses, and that is when Ted Bundy intercepted her and basically just abducted her right behind in the alleyway. Witnesses say they heard the door close. So they heard her leave her boyfriend's house, and they heard the door close.
Let me pause that right quick. You know, it said that her boyfriend walked her a couple blocks. So she was 4 houses down, so probably, or a couple houses, I think it said. So a couple houses, he saw her get close to her house, and Ted Bundy intercepted her within 2 houses of her own. Now that is some creepy stuff right there, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that terrible to be that close to your house and then get interrupted by this type of individual? I mean, you're that close to home, and bam, you're snapped up, and that happened to you. I mean, I don't have sympathy for this guy. I'm kind of glad he got executed because he was not a good guy, no matter what people like to say. None of these people that hurt other people are good people, no matter what people like to think.
See, there's that alleyway
Yes, he did, Rondi.
that she walked down.
All right, guys, so we're standing in the alleyway where Georgianne was abducted from. So she basically was walking towards us when Ted Bundy was hanging out, walking around back here, and of course just bumped into her, and he abducted her right here. It's just mind-boggling. And again, picture it being, basically around midnight, really dark out. And again, put yourself in Georgianne's shoes. 4 houses down is her house. She had, less than 2-minute walk to get back to her sorority house. She had no clue that anything bad would happen to her. And it's just unfortunate Ted Bundy just happened to be hanging around this area. And of course, this being a big sorority fraternity, house area, there's tons of young people, tons of young girls. And so I'm guessing Ted Bundy must have just been walking around here just looking for his next victim. And unfortunately, Georgianne just happened to be coming down right in front of him. So Georgianne Hawkins, her boyfriend, Marvin Gelattley, lived here at the Beta Theta Pi fraternity house right behind us. And so Georgianne Hawkins, her sorority house was only a couple doors down, which we'll go show you. But so they lived right next to each other pretty much.
People like to say there's no similarities between these off-campus home invasions. Well, think of Elliot Rodger. He was trying to break into a sorority house, and they had the door locked, so he was unable to do so. So he shot 2 sorority girls in the front yard. One lived, the other one died. And let's take a look at the guy that I did a video on yesterday, Mr. Stephen McDaniel. He lived off campus, and he lived right next door to his victim. So, I mean, similarities or not, it doesn't mean they're right on point, like they're perfect fit. But there's enough state of mind that tells you that these types of individuals do have the capacity to hurt people.
So one of the last murders that Ted Bundy committed here in Washington State was here at Lake Sammamish Park. And at this park here where we're at right now, Ted Bundy actually committed 2 murders, both on the same day. which is pretty remarkable. He abducted one girl, killed her, and then he came back on the same day and did the same thing. However, today we don't really want to hang out and sit on a blanket on the beach because, first of all, it's January and it's freezing cold. However, on that day, it was July 14th, 1974. So it was a very, very beautiful, warm, sunny day.
I believe this is where people got misconstrued that it was Way Park, and it wasn't. No, this was the park in which he killed 2 individuals.
So, of course, tons of people were out, and the Rainier Beer Company, they actually were sponsoring an event on July 14th, 1974. So tons of people were here because the company had some sort of event going on. And so Ted Bundy, of course, took advantage of that situation. And right on the beach over here, 23-year-old Janice Ott was hanging out, sitting on a blanket, just hanging out. And Ted Bundy went up to her, started talking to her, and convinced her that he needed help moving a sailboat. And so me and Joel's kind of theory is that there's got to be some sort of maybe marina or little dock area where you could tie a sailboat up to, kind of around the bend. And so Ted Bundy convinced Janice Ott to kind of go over there and help him move a sailboat. Of course, he didn't actually have a sailboat. That was all a ruse. He ended up abducting her and killing her about a mile away in Issaquah, which is where we're going to go to next.
She had a husband named James who was attending medical school, actually in California at the time of her abduction and murder. So he wasn't even up here in Washington State at the time. He was down in California. On the day of the abduction and murder, though, she put a note on the door for her roommate that she was living with at the time. And she put that she was going to go sunbathing. So she got on her bike and rode her bike to the lake here. 4 hours later, Denise Marie Nasland, who was 18, she was with her boyfriend and another couple at the lake. She ended up going missing after she went to the restroom.
And she kind of got split up from the group. And he ended up talking to Denise and kind of pulled the same ruse and said, hey, I need help moving my sailboat, again, around the corner. And so he got her to follow him over there. And she unfortunately met the same demise. And he ended up taking her to the same location where he dumped Janice's body as well.
And right quick, if you ask, how did he get them to help him? You remember earlier, they said they saw a man with a sling on? So think about it. He had a sling on, and he's asking these young girls, hey, can you help me move my sailboat? I only have one arm. Sure, 1974. People probably were a lot more trusting back then. I was only 3 years old, so who knows? But I'm sure people didn't really think
Hi, Chris. Thank you for being here.
anything of it,
Mhm.
Kay, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only little nugget that I have for the audience is when I was doing my research on Ted was earlier I talked about how his childhood friend described him. One of the things that she said that stuck out to me was that he did not have any girlfriends in high school. And he doesn't describe to have any girlfriends. So he didn't have any, we know he didn't have any girlfriends in high school. Remember, his mom was young when she got pregnant with him. Now, moving forward, when he started going to the University of Washington, he was actually pursuing a bachelor's in psychology. He met a very beautiful lady by the name of Diane, and that was his first girlfriend. Now he started getting into politics, and they dated for a while. I can't remember exactly for how long they dated, but once he graduated with his bachelor's in psychology, he wanted to go on to go to law school. Now, he didn't have. Now remember, Ted Bundy. If you have him tell it, he was high, good, very good grades, this and that. But in all actuality, that wasn't the case. He didn't get very high marks, and so he didn't get into a good law school. So I wrote down in my notes. I put down high class girlfriend with no with no class money. So he was broke. His parents, weren't helping him through it. He didn't get into a prestigious law school, like he wanted to. And in fact, she ghosted him. She stopped writing to him because, like, she went on, her career went on, and he didn't go on with her, to a university. And she kind of ghosted him. They feel that there was maybe revenge on Diane, because after that breakup, now at the time, now we know that, he did unalive them, but then they were just missing. So 6 months after this breakup, that's when, in less than 6 months, six ladies go missing. So all in Washington state. So I thought that was just keeping that theme going of, his mom was young, now this girlfriend, he never had a girlfriend in high school, but now this girlfriend ghosted him. And then he's starting to.
Nina, there's a link there if you want to come up. And Rondi asked, was his girlfriend just a convenience? We really don't know, but it sounds like she would just kind of like someone to give the ruse that I have a girlfriend, kind of like these married men that are killers. They present themselves as having um, a wife, the kid, the successful job, all these things, but behind the scenes, they have a double life. So I don't know, but that's a great question. And Texas says something about BK that reminds me of Bundy. Hey, Nina, welcome. Let me kind of make room for you up here. Hold on a second. Okay. Welcome, Nina.
Hey, how are you?
Long time no see.
Long time no see.
So, um, I know that you know a little bit about this case. You've told me a lot. So, what do you think so far as we're talking about the similarity? Do you see any kind of similarities, or are they just so abstract that maybe they're here and there?
Well, the biggest thing that okay, did I send you the video that I found that Melissa Koberger shared on her Twitter page?
Yeah, you did.
Come on now, Gage. His mama writes a op-ed about Ted Bundy being a good man and the hearse and blah, 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 right?
Right.
We know that he is pretty much obsessed with Ted Bundy, right? And then in 2017, Melissa Koberger shares a YouTube video called Stranger Beside Me, an homage to Ted Bundy.
Well, I
I
don't know.
mean,
I don't know. That could be. Let's continue watching the video, and then I'm going to put the detective, what's his name, Maines, the
yeah.
video that Koberger was watching. I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to play some of that. So let's watch this a little bit more because my friend um, did a research paper on him. So that's why she's on panel, and she does have a master's degree level in criminal justice as well.
This is where it's starting to fester up, and you know um his killing started.
So, we've also heard that Brian didn't have girlfriends as well, if I can recall. That's really strange. I mean, to to have that kind of similarities. I mean, there's a lot more. I'm going to read some here in a minute, but that is odd. I never knew that about him. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I took down like some notes because I was like, oh my gosh, this is pretty. Because when I had to go back and do some more research on this because we were going to talk about it tonight. I wanted to make sure I got all that early childhood stuff straight. And
Right.
when he talks about it, like he says, oh my gosh, hold on, let me look at my notes. How he put it. He puts it in a way where it leads you to believe that he played football, right? My friends played football. Well, if I say my friend, I mean, Marty, you were a football player in high school, and I mean, and I know
Right.
that to be a fact. But
Yeah.
typically, football guys. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Marty, but typically football guys typically hang out with other football guys. So for you to,
Yeah.
as a football player, if you said, "Yeah, my friends play football," and we look at you, it's easy to assume that you also play football. Is that, but you wouldn't
Right.
use that terminology if you didn't participate in the sport. But the way he worded it led people to believe that, when in fact, he didn't play any sports in high school. In fact, he was very shy. So it doesn't surprise me when I started really taking notes on his childhood, what Sandy Holt said about him. It doesn't surprise me that he just didn't have a big social life in high school, even though he says that he did. But if you listen closely to the wording, he never says that he himself ran track, because he also
Very
said
true.
that he ran track. It was just his friends ran track. But in fact, he was never really associated with any of the, quote unquote, what we would think popular kids were, which was going to be, all of your athletes. They said. And another, just a quick thing here, and then I'm turning it over to you, Marty, because I can go on and on. But another
Well,
quick
that's fine.
thing.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there, and I'm going to share the other video. Um, I was watching a little bit of this earlier, but I don't know really a lot about this either. This is the video that supposedly he had watched from that Dateline episode. Here we go.
Can interact, talk to, quiz people from my true crime childhood. And it's a very surreal feeling. Bob Kepler, who was instrumental in the Washington state murders that Bundy committed. We're going to get into all those, but Bob Keppel was a member of my cool case organization. And he was one of the ones that I didn't have to go get. I went out and, much like a football recruiter, college football, I was recruiting the best of the best. And, I went curiosity. At his high school, according to Ann Rule, who later wrote a book, I think, Stranger Beside Me, and I believe she knew Ted Bundy. I never read the book, but she said when she talked to his high school classmates, they said he was well liked. But yet, I read elsewhere from a neighborhood friend of Ted Bundy's that he was aloof. He didn't fit in. He wasn't well liked. He was false. He would pretend to be bigger than what he was. Say that he hung out with all the athletes and he was a football player, when in fact he didn't, and he wasn't very good at the athletics. He was kind of a loner, maybe kind of a social outcast. Ted Bundy himself said, "I like to stay apart. I didn't drink. I just didn't get involved in cliques." Now, that part, that's paraphrasing it.
So, what do you think about that, Nina? That Ted Bundy created an image about himself that possibly wasn't the truth. What do we know about Koberger at that point in high school?
They're both chameleons.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I mean, because like Ted Bundy, he was to the point in his law degree and stuff like that, that he was hanging out with some pretty high up people. I mean, in the government and stuff like that. I mean, so he is out killing people and hanging out with lawyers and governors and mayors and stuff like that because he learned how to adapt and take on anybody else's whatever they were doing and stuff like that. It's
So
called something.
I saw earlier somebody made a comment about could Brian have been doing research and writing a paper on Ted Bundy at that point in his career? I mean, at that point of his
Well,
education,
I think when he looked up Ted Bundy, school wasn't in though.
do what?
I think when Dateline said that he was looking up like Ted Bundy, school had not started.
Okay.
Yeah, class wasn't in session.
Okay. So what would have been the possibility of him looking up this video? I mean, this guy doesn't seem to be one of those individuals that you're just going to pop on his video because he doesn't even like YouTubers, I don't think, really.
Well, he did a series on Ted Bundy,
Okay.
and I think when he was watching him, it comes out that he was like watching the Ted Bundy series,
Okay.
and then the doctor that he watched. Oh my gosh, what was his name? Doctor? Oh, I don't know, but
I know.
he watched
Oh,
him because
yeah.
he did stuff on Brian Koberger. No,
Right.
he did not on Brian Koberger. Um, he watched him because of something else. Maybe it was because of the Idaho murders.
I remember who you're talking about now.
Yeah.
But let's continue on.
But we have to go back a little bit further, okay, to when he was born in Burlington, Vermont. He was born out of wedlock. So his mother decided, or his mother and his grandparents both decided that the grandparents would raise him, and he was known to think that they were his parents, where his mom was actually thought to be his older sister. Later, he found out the truth of this. Now, do you think that that would have a lasting impression upon somebody?
That
So
my sister is my mom. I think that would have a lasting impression on me.
here's a question for you. We do know definitely that Koberger is, has the two parents and it isn't his sister's baby. We do know that, correct, right? The dad is his dad, correct?
Um, the only thing that I know is that Grandma cheated on Grandpa,
Okay. Okay.
and so that came up. The reason that came up was during the DNA, and I'm like, would that? I was the reason I was asking is because I didn't know if that would have an effect
Right.
on like the family tree and stuff, because it split in the wrong direction, you know.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And I mean, I think Amanda's like what, 37 now,
Yeah.
and Melissa's 34, 35. I mean, there's like years in between each one, I think.
Right.
Now,
So
one thing that I did find out the other day that I did not know, I knew that they had filed the bankruptcies because I've got copies of them. But
mhm.
I did not know that the house that they lived at in Effort actually got foreclosed on and was literally like taken over by the sheriff, and they were like put out, and it was auctioned and everything.
Oh,
And
I didn't I didn't know
Yeah,
that
I
either.
didn't know that. I didn't know that either until I was going through the legals of them, and I found all the stuff on the foreclosure and everything. And so I was like, for a kid that's already being bullied over weight and stuff, and then getting kicked out of their house and it getting foreclosed on, that could probably add to some of the I just don't like my life stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, of course. And I don't know if you watched my Deception of a Killer 1 and 2, but I kind of broke it down all a lot along there too as well. So there was a lot of dysfunction growing up, even though dysfunction to them would not be the same kind of dysfunction as somebody growing up in an urban area, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I mean, your trauma may not be the same as my trauma. You know,
Right.
my trauma may be I dropped my fork. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, and so I mean, I think that that's one of the things is I think between the bullying, the just the brain and the mental problems that I think he knew he had mental problems as a kid. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I
I
agree
think
with
he knew he was different
I agree with that. I agree with that.
and, didn't feel the things that, and see, I sort of kind of understand that. And I'm going to say why, because my brother, when his little girl was about 3 months old, we were sitting on the porch and he was saying that they carried her and got her ears pierced and how he cried when they pierced her ears. And I'm like, what? Why do you cry when you pierce your little girl? He said, because we put holes in something so beautiful that God made. And I was like, I don't think I've ever loved either one of my kids like that. I mean, because that was like really deep.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so I was thinking about that the other night. I was like, wait a minute. So maybe I don't feel things like other people supposed to either.
I get you. Well, let's continue on with this video a little bit.
But it's during this time in Washington where he began exuding behavior that I recognize as a potential for a murderer, and you could be specific and say serial killer. And that reminds me, as I was researching this, I was thinking about, and I want to say this before I forget it, and I'll write it down, but there is more, I know, but to me, Ted Bundy is the first person maybe that I recognized right off the bat that was a serial killer and mass murderer at the same time. How crazy is that, right? I'm sure there's in history a lot more, but he comes to mind right away. He's a
So, if Brian was the culprit, that dog's driving me nuts. If Koberger is the culprit, based on what we've seen, what we've heard all through the last couple of months, I was I identified him as a mass killer the other night. Do you agree with that? Or do you believe that he could have had the propensity to become a serial killer if he is indeed culpable of these?
I think he is a serial killer that got caught before he grew up.
Okay,
So he just
okay,
gets to go down now as a mass murderer.
okay.
So he even
Because
failed at that.
so I never asked you, what did you think about that Dateline episode? I mean, you've had technical issues the last couple of weeks. So what did you think about all the information that came out, especially this part of it?
Here's what I think about the Dateline thing is for the judge to be so dead set and so pissed off on the information that got shared. That tells me right there it's all true. I mean, the judge is mad, okay?
Yeah,
And I mean, if it was just a leak of crazy stuff like whatever didn't matter, I don't see him reacting like that. And so for his reaction to be so fierce, that told me right there that it was fact. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And here's what gets me about it is now the Dateline information is down by the wayside because, oh, it's the leak that matters. Y'all, come on. Did you miss the part that all of this is true? Did y'all miss the white car? Did y'all miss the 3D thing of how it was done? Did y'all miss the part where he's sitting in a chair? I mean, y'all missed every bit of that, and what matters is the leak.
That's the part that just blew my head off right there, mind blown. Was
Exactly.
when he said the killer took time to sit down in the chair and there was a bloody print after he
Yes.
got up and left.
But that doesn't matter. It was leaked.
That just, I mean, let's not go there. But that just puts an image in my mind like all these times that we've talked about that room, I have never thought that he would have sat down long enough to rest and catch his breath and leave.
But the thing about it is, I call it brick wall syndrome and stuff like that. But that adrenal dump,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure between the physical, the adrenaline, the whatever else that goes through you when you kill 4 people, I mean, he may
Cortisol.
have just been about to pass out or something.
Yeah. And people have asked, do you believe that he sat there and watched them die?
Oh, I think that, I mean, I'm sure he watched every one of them die because
Well, yeah.
I'm sure they were dead before he walked out of either room.
Well, kind of like Texas said, was he resting or was he admiring his work?
But the thing about it is, if he was either way, let's say he was admiring it or he was resting. What makes you think you've got time to rest, dude? Get your butt up and get out of the house.
But we don't know. I mean, he had time to sit in a chair.
Right.
And I don't know what kind of chairs are in that room. I know that you guys deep dive into that stuff. So you tell me what kind of chair was in Xana's room that you've noticed in pictures.
All I've ever noticed is the desk chair.
Okay.
That's all I've ever noticed is the desk chair.
So it would have been that furry looking white
Yeah,
chair, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But because
So
see, have you seen the video where it's the bed and then her and she's lost her vape?
yeah, I've seen
Okay,
that.
I think that's the chair she's sitting in.
Okay.
Because it sort of looks like she's sitting on the bed, but when you really look at the video, you can tell that she's off the bed.
So what do you think about the theory when they say he's upstairs with Maddie and Kaylee and he's interrupted by Xana potentially coming up the stairs because she hears something. He's startled. He jumps off the bed, starts running down the stairs after Xana, and that's when the knife sheath was possibly left. And he catches up to Xana in her room. What do you think about that theory? Do you believe it? Do you not believe it?
Before I answer that, I need you to confirm something.
Okay.
Was the sheath, and it may not matter, but it does. Was the sheath under Maddie, or was it laying beside Maddie?
I've always heard it was under her.
So how does that happen?
Do what?
How does it get under her?
Well, I mean, she's jerking as she's dying, I'm sure. And, if he's right handed, he would have the sheath in his left hand. And if he's on top of her and choking her or anything like that, he could have placed one
Yeah,
hand on her leg and the sheath slid underneath her.
right. See, and people are like, Why would you have a sheath in your hand if you're going in to kill somebody? That tells me right there he didn't go in to kill her.
No.
If he's holding that in his hand and the knife in the other hand, that tells me that that was just going to be the be quiet tactic. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying.
I mean, I'm holding true, and I could be totally wrong with this, but I've always felt he was going to abduct her.
That or SAer.
I've always felt that for whatever reason that has popped into my head. You know
Yeah,
how
they blew my theory of Xana right out the window.
I have always thought that, and I've always said that. I thought he was going to abduct her, and the fact that Kaylee was in the bed with her just threw everything off whack.
And
Then
that's where we've talked about that black and white thinking with no gray area, and that's when everything just turns to chaos.
Of course, of course. I mean, I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. It could have happened just like they said in the Dateline episode, and I'm okay with that. But in
Yeah,
my mind, I'm thinking, probable things that could have occurred if he was into that pornographic stuff. Well, a lot of that sleeping SA stuff is the person is asleep. He could have been watching, entering, positioning himself to SA and
right,
was totally blown away,
right.
if that makes sense.
No, and I mean that's the reason that because I mean I know that to some it's not a big deal about it being under her or beside her, but I mean because a lot of people are like, how does it get under her then? And I'm like, okay, I don't have an answer to that. I mean,
I've never heard people question that recently, but I've heard people play on words where they say it was placed under her, it was next to her, this, that, and the other. I have heard that.
yeah, because it's under her and the cover. Now, see, I mean, I, I don't know, but I mean, I'm like, does it matter? I mean, there's three people. Even if Maddie didn't struggle because she's passed out, him and Kaylee's still struggling,
Right.
which can shove it anywhere.
And that shows the interest of the case right there, Nina. The interest in you looking at this case and I looking at this case and some other people in the chat looking at this case is we're looking at the crime. We're not looking on the loophole.
No,
We could be looking at the loophole and trying to theorize how this isn't right, how this was set up, how this wasn't captured correctly, or this could have been this and this could have been that. That's the difference. When you're looking at the crime scene for the crime, you look at things totally different.
and
We're
see,
not
everybody.
looking at Koberger. We're not looking at Koberger. We're looking at the crime scene.
But see, the thing about it too is, everybody wants to doubt this and doubt that. Have they not picked up that the sheath was seen on the body cam by Payne? Payne didn't see it himself. It says that he saw it when he was watching the body cam footage.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure that when they walked in there, they probably didn't see a sheath because they had no idea what they were going to walk into. And they probably were just like, oh, hell. And I mean, you can't imagine how they reacted. They never knew that they was going to be seeing anything like that,
Of course not. Well,
and
let's
so,
listen to this guy a little more, and then we'll
okay,
continue. Okay.
Serial killer. Now, the definition of a serial killer varies, but to me, more than 3 killings in a prolonged period of time with a break in between. I mean, he obviously was a serial killer. Now, he was not named a serial killer back in the 70s because that term didn't really exist. But he's also a mass murderer, meaning more than one victim at one occasion during a singular event. He did that. Think of the the Chi Omega. Killed 2, right down the road, injured another, 2 more in the house, 5 victims in one night within a couple hours of each other. So he's a serial killer and mass murderer at the same time. Back to his teenage years. He was known to be a burglar. He was also known to be a peeping Tom. These are all indications of somebody that could progress and evolve into that.
And we've talked about that, Nina, but there's been none that people have made any kind of correlation with Koberger that there was any sightings of any kind of voyeuristic in his teens. There was no kind of peeping Tom. I mean, I believe early on Koberger was trying so hard to be good. Once he got over the addiction, he was trying so hard to be the rescuer, change his path in life. And then he left home to college, and then things started, continuing. He was achieving. And then once he got to WSU, or even before, when he ordered the knife, I believe something turned. What do you think?
I think he knew. I think it was planned for 10 years.
Well, what makes you believe that he was a peeper? I saw your comment. Elaborate on that.
Okay.
I mean, I've
Okay.
really
So
never seen anything that I could see that, but I've never
what?
seen any kind of logical.
Right. Well, it
You-
starts with the three girls at the student union at the University of Idaho. Okay. The
I
three
know,
girls complained about him creeping them out, right? That at one point they even went outside and ate.
right? I remember
And
that.
so I was researching that. And of course, when I research, I go through and I read every comment. I don't care if there's 1,000, I read every comment.
Okay.
And so when I read the comment, it said something about what happened at DeSales University. And I was like, what happened at DeSales? So of course I go there. Well, then as I'm reading the comments in there, it starts talking about a peeping Tom that was a few miles from his house at a ski resort. And that he had been questioned about that. And I was like, what? I mean, so that was from the comments. And then from the comments there, it goes into Moscow, Pennsylvania. And that's how I found out there was a Moscow, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Is because the comment is everybody needs to look at what happened in Moscow, Pennsylvania. And so, I mean, I can't say that it happened because I have no confirmation of that, but that's what makes me think that he's a peeper. Plus, he ran every night. Why do you run at night? Because you can see in the windows.
Okay. Let me clarify. Let me clarify something that I said because it's being misconstrued. When I said he was being good, I didn't mean that he still didn't have these tendencies. I
Right.
didn't, that he still didn't have these opportunistic fantasies that he was trying to curtail his urges. I didn't mean that he was a choir boy. I didn't mean that he shifted gears and just became a choir boy.
No,
No,
he
that's
just
not
learned how
how
to
it
mask better.
right. The mask got a little better. And I like Firefly's statement where she said he was a security guard for 5 years at the perfect cover to, to skulk around at night. And you're right, because I did a case the other day on Anthony Shore with Mr. Khan, and he was a telephone repairman.
Right.
Perfect cover.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's the one that would get up on the telephone and look at them through the down from the poles, right?
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, perfect cover. Perfect cover. I do see that. I wanted to clarify that because I was seeing a lot, a lot of comments. I'm like, no, 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 no. I wasn't meaning he totally shifted into one direction and just gave that up. I'm sure he was a chameleon.
Well,
I
I mean,
really
I
do.
think too that a lot of his effort went into his studies to craft his art.
Yeah. What better way to become proficient at what you want to do? Because it said, in The Deception of a Killer, couple ones that I did, it said he was obsessed with criminology.
But I would like for
Nice.
you, because you know this better than I do. I wish people would understand that he was not as far advanced in his studies as people are making him out to be. I
Yes,
mean,
he
I
was.
even made a little video where an FBI profiler, I forgot her name, she teaches at the University of George Washington or something now. But anyway, she talks about forensic science is oh my gosh, what kind of science degree? A social science? No. Anyway, that it's a science degree. It's not, he never went into the murder house at DeSales. He never, you know, I mean, and everybody's like, he knows better. He was blah 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 and blah blah blah. No, he wasn't. He had a degree in psychology and a science degree.
Yes. And he also applied for a digital data analyst. That was his application.
Okay, and did you know that DeSales University, the program that he was in, the video that I made, I've got it. It said that they offered all kind of internships right there in Pennsylvania. He didn't have to go to WSU for an internship.
Right.
He chose to go 2,500 miles to Washington State. Now, why do you
So
think that?
if you're a data analyst, you're looking on the computer, looking at data,
It's just
and
analytical.
yes, it's inconsistencies of all this stuff and trying to correlate it into a data spreadsheet and blah blah blah, all that. So it's not anything to do with forensic. It has
Right.
nothing to do with knowing how to commit a crime or get away with a crime.
I
It had
mean,
nothing to do with that. And I've been saying that for,
thank you, but how do you get people to listen?
and he was not a PhD.
No, he
You
was
can
still
get,
3 years from that.
you could be a PhD in basket weaving and still be having a doctor after your an initials.
Okay, he was going for his doctorate, right?
Yes, but you could be a doctor of anything.
Right. But
You
see,
know,
the thing about it,
that's why when people say, well, this person's a doctor, that person's a doctor of what? I know a
right.
guy that's a doctor and he's a doctor of accounting and he still calls himself a doctor just to get that accolade.
See, Texas says, wasn't he in cloud-based forensics?
No, he was in
No,
data
no.
analyst. That's what the application said. Data analyst.
And I mean, he was in his first semester.
Yes, of his PhD curriculum.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking, he still had 3 good years. Even because I do know that the TA position knocked some of the credits off, so even at that, he still had 3 years.
So we've never been told what type of student he was. We're hearing here that Bundy wasn't a great student, you know? We know that Brian at DeSales was supposedly given a letter of recommendation to go to WSU and blah blah blah. We already know that.
Right.
Before that, what kind of student was he? Was he struggling? Did he manage to have those kind of issues, kind of like Bundy?
Well,
It'd be
I
nice for you
I
guys
do
to know.
know. I know the instructor that recommended him to WSU said that he was probably in the top 10 as far as students study wise because she never met him in person. She said she wouldn't know him if she ran up on him because most of his classes were online. Now, you take somebody like Koberger that's doing online classes, even if you're doing in-person classes, DeSales has 5,000 students. And you ship him to WSU, to a university that has 25,000 students. I think the demographics social would put him into shock.
I mean, I believe that people get so enamored by titles and understandings of criminal justice procedures and judicial procedures and things like that. They get enamored because they don't understand it. So
But
anything,
isn't there
go
a
ahead.
difference between a criminal justice and a criminology?
I believe that the higher you go, it becomes kind of like
Criminology.
I'm getting my bachelor's in like 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Right.
If I go to get my master's, then I can get it in the criminologist, which would enable me to specialize in an area of criminal justice, whether it be forensics, whether it be, any of that,
Right.
fingerprinting, DNA stuff, any of that. It's kind of like a doctor. Before you become a doctor, you can be a PA, right? A
Right.
physician's assistant. And before you do that, you can be a nurse, or you could be a nurse with a master's
Practitioner.
degree. Yeah, I mean, so it's a level up. So by the time you get to the doctorate level, that's when the doctorate level.
Right. I mean, because the lady that I put in that video, she talks about the forensic science is like physics, and I mean it's like the sciences. It's not going in there and doing fingerprints and blood spatter, and
No,
it's the science of it.
right. You're right. So I mean, this is interesting that we're talking about this because there's been so much embellished on what it wasn't. You know, they,
Exactly. I mean, because everybody's like, well, it can't be him because he was blah 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 blah, and he knew better.
well, one thing that we do know is it could always be anyone.
Oh yeah.
Your physical stature, your IQ, your any of that doesn't mean your physical features. It doesn't enable you to be a killer. If
Right.
urge and fantasy cross opportunity, guess what? We're gonna have a murder. It doesn't matter if you're 4'3",
Right.
with a weapon, without a weapon. One determined man or woman can kill anybody. Now I'm going to answer a question from Bullets that I saw up here really quick, and then we're going to get to Mr. Maines.
Okay.
He says, "Why do you think that most serial killers don't abduct?" Just curious. I've always thought that because I believe that in order to start somewhere, just like Bundy, he started abducting and then he led into breaking in places. It'd be easier to take your victim out of the residence than it would be to take them out while they were in the residence, I would believe. I could be totally wrong. But, in that residence, everything was hidden. There were small statured women. He was an athletic male. He could have put her in a duffel bag, taken her out, thrown her in the trunk, and went and took her to Wawa Park and did whatever he wanted to her, or even back to his apartment. Nobody would have been the wiser. But I could be wrong on that. I just have always thought that for whatever reason.
And I mean, people want to know about, okay, he's never been in the house. How do we know he's never been in the house, Gage? The house was empty for 2 months during the summer. Empty.
Also, those 23 times, what do you think he was
Did you see how far that reaches?
I haven't really looked into this case
It does
since.
not even it does not even reach Sigma Chi.
So it's
It
very
reaches it
close.
reaches Banfield. It reaches the end of Queen Apartments. It doesn't even reach Walenta
Yeah.
because somebody asked if it reached the tower. And I'm not exactly sure where the tower is, but I don't see the tower in the radius.
Well, even in the case that I was doing earlier, the Texas Rangers said they do a triangulation, even back then before this cast stuff. So it points in the direction of the nearest location where this phone could possibly be. I mean, there's only so many directions this phone was at.
Well, I mean, because you hear, yeah, okay, so what? That same tower pings if you're in Washington. No, y'all don't understand. We're talking 328 feet.
Well, to counsel that theory, then how come his phone never pinged in Moscow after the murders?
Exactly.
If y'all want to say that in the PCA, it states
Yeah,
that
because
phone
he
never
said that
pinged.
he said shopping was better in Moscow. Well, he obviously never went shopping there again.
That phone never pinged in Moscow ever again after the murders.
Exactly.
That's in the PCA. I didn't make that up. Go read the PCA. You will see it. We're talking about the 8458 phone. It says the phone never pinged again in Moscow after the murders. So, to y'all's theory, if he was at his residence in Pullman, it still would have been pinging in Moscow. To y'all's theory,
Yeah.
but I didn't get on here to debunk people's theories. I
Oh,
got
I
on
know.
here to show Let's see what this man has to say.
Okay.
Point. Possibly for Ted Bundy. That rejection. Another myth that I want to talk about in regards to Ted Bundy is his looks. Everywhere you see, everyone says he's so good looking. I mean, I don't see it. I don't think he's bad looking, but I mean, are people just comparing him to other serial killers like Otis Toole? I mean, compared to Otis Toole, I'm a beauty queen. So I can imagine Ted Bundy in the realm of serial killers is good looking. But is he good looking as a general figure? I don't know. I guess. But it plays such an important factor into why, when he was arrested, people believed he couldn't do it. That still happens today. Even with someone's own confession, they tell you everything. People just will not believe it. All the evidence is there. They will not believe it. Not only just based off of looks, but when they talk to him, oh, he could never do that. He's so nice. Folks,
How many times have we heard that about Mr. Koberger?
Well, I mean, the thing about it, though, is when we hear it about him, it's like he said, they don't want to believe anything. He's a choir boy.
In one breath, you're telling me he's frail and unable to do this, but in another voice, you're telling me he's a strong, fit guy. Which one is it? Make up your mind. I believe he's culpable of doing this crime.
Kickboxing is not a frail activity.
Well, even if he didn't kickbox, running 6 to 7 miles a night is
Okay,
going to build up some stamina and endurance.
in Discord, I put the route. It's the only thing that's in his Strava, and it's the route that he ran, and it's like 1 point something miles in like 6 minutes. That's not frail.
No.
I mean, you
But
know,
when he stands up, when they say all rise, is he rocking back and forth like he's about to lose his balance? Since his balance is so bad, does he almost fall out of his chair throughout the hearing? No, he's stoic. He sits there in that chair and doesn't move, just like Stephen McDaniel did in his interview. No movement whatsoever, just sitting there like a brick statue. Do you believe that he's frail, Nina?
Okay, see, right now he could be frail because he's probably starving himself to lose weight
No.
and losing some muscle mass.
Just yes or no. Do you believe he was
Hell
too frail
no.
to commit these crimes?
Hell no. He was totally fit when he committed those crimes.
You know, people have said that photo that he took the next morning, he looked so thin, so small. He looked like he couldn't have been in that home committing any of those crimes.
To me, he looks like the proud nothing.
You know, like I said, it doesn't matter how you're built. You have that motivation to do what you want to do, you're going to get it done.
Okay, so I mean, how this is going to sound really bad, and I don't mean for it to be, but okay, we'll say he's frail. Maybe that's the reason he chose to go in on people that were inebriated and passed out and couldn't fight back, is because he's a frail little chicken that. No, Kelly, Nina, be quiet.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I mean, think about it. Look at Maddie. Everybody wants to say, I think it was a machete. Do you know that a K bar would seem like a machete up against Maddie?
Yes. Hmm.
I mean, come on. That knife is huge.
I believe he researched Mickey by watching porn because you know they have those. I'm going to be honest, I've watched porn before. They have all kinds of different types of pornography. But as they said in the Dateline episode, they said, he was looking at drugged, asleep, compromising situations where you're easy to go in and hurt somebody without them having the ability to know it's coming. The ambush
Right.
effect.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And even if he wasn't, I mean, like I said, I do not believe he went in there to ambush anybody but one person. And the only way you get past Ethan is for that poor fella to be passed out in his bed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be morbid here, but your body goes into involuntary movement while you're being attacked like that. Whether you're trying to fight back, whether you're trying not to fight back. We don't know if Maddie actually scratched a piece of him, any of that. We don't know. People say that his DNA wasn't under her fingernails. Okay, so it wasn't. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Okay? Because as you're dying, your muscles are involuntary spazzing.
Yes.
So you're going to be flopping. I mean, I'm not trying to be graphic here, but you're going to be going, all over the bed. And the same thing with Kaylee. So
And
to sit
that's
there
the thing.
and just to assume that they just laid there and took it, any of them, is idiotic to think that.
But see, I read too. I don't know where I read it because I do so much damn research. But it was talking about a girl that got attacked in her sleep, and that when he did her throat, she sat straight up in the bed
Yeah.
from the body reaction.
Yes. Because your muscles constrict. The same
Right.
thing I've told people that if you get slashed, your tendons, your muscles, they're no longer elongated. they shrink up like a rubber band and they constrict.
Yeah, and I
So
mean,
you're unable to fight. When you're slashed right here or slashed right here, there's no more fighting. That arm is going to dangle by your
yep.
side.
Yeah, because it gets the muscles, it gets the tendons, it gets, everything that paralyzes you.
Yes. People think that these individuals were lucid enough to be screaming, to making a lot of noise,
Did you
to
know
be,
sometimes fear causes you not to be able to scream?
of course,
It
of
just
course.
won't come out.
Well, I mean, to have that kind of traumatic situation happen to you, I don't know how you'd be focused on screaming. You'd
I
be
mean, I can
focused,
honestly say that when I got stabbed, I don't remember screaming.
you'd be focused on trying to live, Nina,
Right.
not screaming. You'd be focused on trying to live through the situation, not worried about how it sounds,
Right.
how other people are going to come help you. It's just you and the person.
I'm here to tell you, you cannot judge somebody by their demeanor. It's everything is false. It's what they portray that they want you to see. Ted Bundy was a master at this. He was a master manipulator. I would equate him to Charles Manson. He would project back to you what you wanted to hear. That gained their trust. That gained their allegiance. It also shows their vulnerability. And Ted Bundy often said about his victims how he would look for the ones that were vulnerable. And he took advantage of that. And we'll get into all that later this week.
I'd like to do another one tomorrow, Nina, if you'd like to join me, because it's getting kind of late and I have more time tomorrow. I'd like to continue this one and I'd like to go back and finish the one that I started. Um, what do you think? Are you down?
Yeah, I didn't hear it, but yeah.
I'd like to
Sorry,
continue this.
doggy duty was calling.
It's okay. It's okay. But I'd like to continue this because there is so much in it that you can dive into that it's just not going to be collaborated in just 2 hours.
Right.
There's a lot. And I hope that you individuals in the chat that you've enjoyed this, that you come back tomorrow night and join us and tell people to join you in the chat to come give some valuable insight on whether they know about Bundy or Koberger based on facts and documents, not on hearsay and rumor.
I do have something to say.
Okay.
I know it's not nice to promote other people's channels, but I think doing this you will approve. If y'all missed the debate between Harsh Reality and JB Gunner, go watch it.
I didn't watch it. I'll have to
Oh
go.
my gosh. He actually got Harsh Reality to just say that probably in reality, Brian Koberger did it. And you know how Harsh Reality is.
Well, the other day, an individual was up there debating him, and he stated on another panel that he won that debate against JB, that he'd like to debate him sober.
No. Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
I watched that whole debate.
I did too. That guy's a moron. He's a moron. He he deserves to be on the panel that he's on. They give him plenty of credence and accolades because that's the only place that he sounds intelligent. Any
Oh,
other
you
place
mean
he goes,
that one that says that some of those videos I do are ignorant.
yeah. Well, you notice I didn't even care to mention his name. I mean, he's that. um, you guys, I hope that y'all enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll be able to do the second part tomorrow night. What do y'all think? Y'all want a second part tomorrow night?
Well, y'all want me to go live and tell y'all my new theory?
Well, why don't you go live after this because I got to get to bed.
Yes, you
Tomorrow's
have school, and that's your priority.
school, and Mondays are always hell. So I'd like to be a little lucid when I wake up. You know, but why don't you go live? I'll check it out.
Oh my gosh, I can't go live. I don't know how to share anything. Nobody will know what I'm talking about.
Well, break down your theory. I mean, break out those maps that you told me about.
Yes, Xana had a nice rack. What? What?
That, that's what he said about her. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I forgot about that.
yeah, that's what he said about her. But let's quit
Oh,
talking about the guy. I mean, he's not worth air to promote any of that crap. They don't have the coups to talk about the case in an articulate way. So they just make up their own thoughts and theory.
mm-mm-mm. I guess that's what I like about being up here with you is I feel like that we sort of I mean, I know we don't take Koberger out of it, but we look at it without him being the focal.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, all these individuals that could be potential serial killers or murderers, because we all have that capability. No matter what you view yourself as, we all have that capability. And what better way to learn not to make mistakes than by watching previous people that did it and how they got caught?
Exactly. I mean, my first true crime book was Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
I guess that would be showing my age, but and after that, I got so obsessed with true crime. I know I've read every Ann Rule book, Joe McGinnis, and all of them. Those are the older ones. I mean, but the thing about it is, we've all got it in us. We just don't. I don't know that. I'm not going to say it doesn't control us, but we don't know what we're capable of until you do it.
Well, to be fair as well, just like I did that missing persons case earlier, you know, whoever did that to him deserved to have the death penalty or capital murder, filed against them.
Right.
20, 25, 23 years or 22 years and counting, and they still don't have a suspect. I believe that if this individual is found innocent by a jury of his peers, then justice has spoken either way, whether I believe he did it or whether I believe he didn't do it. I don't have the authority to speak on whether he's innocent or guilty.
None of us do. I
They're
mean,
jurors.
all
They're,
any of us have is speculation.
well, it's not speculation. It's based on how we feel about the crime in itself. And we talk about the crime. We talk about the crime. We don't talk about the person that much. We do,
Yeah,
but,
that's what I was trying to say.
you know,
I mean, we do discuss him because he is the one in the defendant's chair.
yeah. I mean, I would say that at this point, everything's overwhelming that shows his state of mind. Not coincidental, not circumstantial. They're building a case, and I want you to hear this here first. They're building a case on the state of mind of this potential killer. So once you give the narrative of the state of mind of somebody who would have done this crime, and then you start putting in the pieces of Mr. Koberger, are those pieces going to add up more that he could have been, or are they going to add up where he couldn't have been? And a jury has that burden of proof to deliberate whether he's innocent or whether he's guilty. So I want you to think about the state of mind of this crime, not just about the Elantra, not about Linda Lane, not about the knife sheath, not about any of the stuff that people constantly talk about, but the state of mind of the individual that could have done this.
Exactly.
And
Because
that's
it does, the other stuff doesn't matter. I mean, that's circumstantial. His state of mind is not circumstantial.
no, it's not, because it shows how an individual has culpability based on the evidence that they are tying him to that is not circumstantial. Those downloads, the search history, the all the stuff that they have outlined is not circumstantial. That is Brian in those photos. Whether you want to say that's a bad Photoshop job or whatever, you know what? That started with an image of somebody. And they didn't make these images up, I believe. I believe that these images were on that phone.
Oh, most definitely. And I mean,
So,
okay, fine. He could have had pictures of him in a pink hoodie or whatever. I mean, who cares? Look what he looked like in all black.
and the question is, what would cause him to dress up like that, Nina? What would cause him to dress up like that? Was he going for a run?
Yeah,
What
he
was
was
the
going for a run, all right.
what was the caption? What was the circumstance?
Now, I will say that
When
the
were
only
these pictures,
question,
when were these pictures taken?
right. Well, I know that they were taken at WSU for sure because it's WSU attire.
But that's that's how people investigate things. It's the state of the mind of the killer. It's not, we're gonna make this evidence fit you. It's first we're gonna see the state of the mind, the mens rea, the mental state of the potential killer. And then we're gonna get this evidence. And then we're gonna look at certain people by process of elimination. And you also have to look that if this man had been eliminated, which I'm sure they tried to eliminate him multiple times, what kept them from eliminating him? Because they eliminate people instead of trying to make them the suspect.
I
They're
started to say
eliminating.
most of the time investigations are for elimination.
Yes,
They're
yes,
not they're not to, I mean, of course they're to catch the person, but it's through process of elimination.
yes. But if they had alternative perpetrators, you don't believe that those hundreds of officers and FBI agents and all this other stuff, how even the individualized investigators that were hired independently, you don't think any of those would have came up with an alternate suspect?
Well, I mean, two things that I look exactly two things that I look at too is the feds took his iCloud account all the way back to 2016. Then in 2000, okay, I'm going to get off subject for a second and we'll talk about this another time, but I'll just two things to think about. His iCloud all the way back to 2016. And I didn't know that much about Google trending and stuff like that until a couple of months ago when I found out that Brian Christopher Koberger's suspect showed up on Google trending all the way back to 2011.
Yeah, I saw somebody talking about that the other night. Did
Well,
they?
now I was in Vanna's chat. Whoops, because I saw she was doing the
She
trending.
was, yeah, because she was the one that was doing that live on that. Her and another
And if you'll
creator.
remember, I think I sent you the trending stuff a couple of months ago.
Isn't that interesting how you had it and somebody else presents it as it's their own?
And because who else is going to be researching that in 2011 besides himself?
Himself? Because the Dateline episode did say he Googled his name more than once.
Yeah, he Googled his name like 4 times in a week. Why are you researching your name? I mean, okay, fine. I've Googled myself, but not 4 times in a week.
I mean, it's all about, like I said, the state of mind and whether the evidence is going to be presented to the jury in a culpable way that's going to show guilt or potential innocence.
And
Nothing
see,
more.
I didn't realize that the weekend of the 13th would have been the last weekend before the holidays that he had to, before his tag expired.
Yeah, I always
And,
thought that was interesting too, because why not commit a murder right before you got to change your tags? What better
but
way?
I mean, it was really smart though, because it gave him let's bring the other states in that don't require 2 tags.
Yeah.
So it widened the suspect pool.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Nina. So
I
I will
always
send
enjoy it.
you the link. And thank you so much for Detective Mange for allowing us to use your video. I do give you all the credit to that video. It is yours and yours alone. I was just simply commenting on it using fair use, and Nina was doing the same. We mean no harm. We just thought that your expertise deserved to be broadcast on on my platform.
That's our way of saying, hey, dude, come see us.
It says Tommy has a video. He solved the case tonight. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Hey, don't watch that one. Go watch Harsh and JB Hunter.
Okay, I'm not watching anything tonight. Y'all have
You're,
a wonderful
yeah,
night.
she's got school tomorrow. We got to let you go.
Yeah, you have anything you want to say to the chat right quick before you hop down?
I love y'all, and I'm sorry I've been MIA.
Well, we're glad you're back. Take care, Nina.
Take care. Love y'all.
All right. So there you have it. We gave a breakdown of a little bit of Bundy, and we're going to continue this tomorrow night. Probably late night like this is, probably about 8:30ish. So if you don't have your notifications set, make sure you have them set up so that you can come hang out with Nina and myself as we continue this trek to see the similarities between not only murderers, but potential murderers in the making. Once again, I'm not saying Mr. Koberger is guilty or innocent. You heard my stance on that. The jury had the job to do in a couple months. Y'all have a wonderful night. Maestro, cue that music.